Executive Insider. This is the show where we give you access to elite executives, where they're giving us the inside scoop on all the latest techniques and trends in the professional world. And I'm so excited today. We're going to be talking about a really important subject, which is managing your business and evaluating some of the, I want to say, like ethical concerns around doing the right thing for the business and doing the right thing for your people. And this came out of an article that was written on the Work It Daily site, and I want to bring that up so that all of you can see it. It's 5 leadership dilemmas posed by the coronavirus, by the pandemic. And I'm very lucky to have Pawan Chandra today. He's going to be talking about this. He's the author of this article, and we're going to really get into it. Specifically, how do you make those ethical decisions? And when do you know if you've done enough or done too much or done the wrong thing? I'm actually really excited that I'm not on the hot seat today for this conversation, because I don't think it's an easy one. And I love that Pawan rose to the challenge on this. So let's bring him up on the screen and give him a shout out. Hey there.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for writing that piece for Work It Daily. I have to tell you, it hit me between the eyeballs. As the owner of a business, I would read the section and go, yep. And then I'd read that and go, yep. Every single thing you hit on in this piece, I have been personally dealing with as an executive. So everyone that's listening today, please, if you haven't read the article, go read it, because it's going to make a lot of sense. But, talk to me a little bit. I want to understand, you're the head of supply chain. You've been in this for a long time. Where did you get your experience and acknowledgement that you had to take a look at these issues? Walk us through that a little bit before I start pelleting you with questions.
Thank you, J.T. I never considered writing an article in the first place. It was just 3 months back, and the article essentially brought in light features that I went through in my experience. So, right from the beginning, when we were hearing that the virus is affecting some countries, it was a real experience that we really thought it is some localized problem and it will not happen and it will just pass away. And as time went by and things got closer, I found myself completely getting involved with the whole thought process. And at first it was more like news. It's happening there, it's happening in the country as well. And more closer it came into our factory, or I'm saying the issues started getting discussed in the factory. Now the real thing was that when we found out that the numbers are really climbing, is when we had to confront with the issues directly head on. And that is the time when I myself had to go through the whole experience of how to manage the situation and how to address issues, that it really brought me thinking that, what is the right thing to do.
Right.
And that is where, frankly speaking, as a person who's really trained and over the years who has worked, the one thing that you really are taught to do is maximize stakeholder value. And that's where I'm saying I'm saying every argument, every decision of yours is government. And the moment you went back home, and then you started thinking that, oh, you are a leader, but you are also a human being. And you have a vulnerability. So when you went back to work and you looked at the faces of your people, and they are now vulnerable, and you are responsible for them, that's when this whole quest started. And I thought I'll sort of write down my journey or write down my experience, and in that, going through that journey, what I thought would be the way out, or what should be the way in which one should approach the thing.
That makes total sense. And, I want to bring it up really quick so that everyone can see it who hasn't read. So let me just have them take a look really quickly here, Pawan. So you share this incredible story, but let me just recap the 5. So one of the things you thought about was survival of the business versus doing good. Then it was number 2, business operations continuity versus people's well-being and safety. Then it was resource deployment versus the community need, right? Your greater community. 4 was concessions and employee working policies versus disciplinary procedures. And then lastly, recognition of performance versus conservation of cash and benefits. Again, I want to compliment you to be so succinct and to be able to map out those 5 major themes. That took a lot of thought because, like you said, we're conditioned as executives, stakeholder value, do what's right for the business. But there's this huge emotional tug when we're a leader. So I think my first question to you is, how does a leader know if they've done enough, if they've thought these things through, and if they're doing enough to serve both masters, so to speak?
Well, I think as the situation in this particular case evolved, and to a situation like this, we did not have any parallel before.
Mm-hmm.
So there was really no guideline or no benchmark or no thumb rule to say, okay, this is what you have done. And in fact, what you did, even at work, in terms of people's safety or the business continuity, you just found yourself the next day the situation changing, and then you found that what you had done was not enough. And then when you kept on going over a period of a month or two, you still find, even after 2 months, and you still think the size of the problem is so large, and still you have not done enough. So it's very, very difficult to say that what is the objective criteria to say enough. But what I found in my journey was what I would say I had heard conversations about what they said is organizational purpose. And that is the time when, as a leader, that I had to make a decision. That is the time when it sort of came live for me, because we felt we had a purpose, we had heard about it, we were possibly implementing it, but it was at this particular point of time that it became the guiding stone of saying what should be the priority. And we didn't have to look very, very far. The moment we came up against an issue, what our basic instinct told us was the right thing to do on the spot, in the first 5 seconds of the thought, was the right thing to do. It was devoid of any rationalization, but you knew this is it. And if it matched with your organization's purpose, then it was absolutely the perfect thing to do.
Amazing. I love that you do know, it comes to you. But I think for some people that comes up and then they immediately revert back to that old mental model of, but I have to do what's right for the company, and how are we going to make that happen? And I don't have the resources, and I can see people backing away. So I think my question to you is, even in those moments, were you ever unsure that you were doing the right thing?
I had my movements. Like I said, since I didn't know it was, when I didn't know it was enough. So obviously, the paradox was that, am I doing too much for the business, or am I doing too much for the people? Right. So it was like you are on a seesaw and you're trying to every day recalibrate, and possibly every day when you go back home in the night, you just think, okay, what is the better thing I could do tomorrow morning? And the only one thing that came out to me very, very powerfully in those times was, if anything I can do is, first thing is, I have to be in the front. Because like you said, was I unsure? Yes, I was very unsure. I was very unsure that I don't know when I come back tomorrow, will I be one of the victims?
Right.
So but what I was sure was that if I'm responsible for such a larger team, then I have to be at the front. And then from there, I have to guide the actions, whether for the business or for the people.
Right. I think it's very interesting that you said that you would go home every night and think. I think that sums me up perfectly since this has started. that you do. You try to do what's right, and then you think about it and you think about it, and then you're also going home to a family. And we're always taught as leaders, if we don't take care of ourselves first, then we're not going to be in a position to lead. So there's all that stress that I think comes with it as well. It's certainly not an easy thing. And that leads me to my next question, because it can be really easy as leaders for us to want to compare ourselves to other organizations or to other leaders and what they're doing. I think in some ways we're almost looking to figure out, okay, is someone doing it right that I can mimic or copy, that sort of thing. How do you avoid that? I have my own thoughts on what I've done, but I'd like to hear, how did you avoid that comparison and being hard on yourself and almost confusing yourself and just dialing in like you did?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that, because that dilemma did not even come looking outside the organization for us, because being part of supply chain, we were on the field, and being on the field, our work had no substitute of doing anything virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And in our sort of environment, where lot of the production or the distribution is physical in nature, and you're dealing with a mass of people, then it's, but now that somebody does a comparison, that why that the people in marketing or the people in finance or the people in other functions who are remotely working are getting privileged or are quite safe. And so that was a challenge that uh, really first it had to be internalized to say what is the right thing, and then we had to talk to our teams directly and very, very openly and say to them that their job can be done from a virtual center. Can your job be done? Can you service the customer? Can you service the pharmacy by not going?
Right.
So that was one. So that was the rational part of it, to sort of get them to understand and to yourself be comfortable with it. The second was the fact to say that we are in a food industry,
Right.
and we are in a food industry, and if we don't supply, if we don't do it, so then how we are going to have a second problem, which is a food scarcity.
Right.
So imagine that if we have to do that, there is a greater calling in our work right now, and that greater calling is something you should look at. So it's more like, meaning, I remember one of the conversations I had with my team. Do you expect a soldier to sit in his drawing room and tell you how to fight the enemy? So why would you at this time think about how a marketing person would do, whereas the right thing is to be delivering right now, or to be manufacturing?
Right.
So I think a balance of a rational as well as an emotional uh, uh, dialogue, and a very, very open dialogue, in which you are yourself ready to be questioned and answerable. And the only thing was that since you were standing in the front, therefore you had a moral high ground to, okay, speak up and at least discuss the point and call on people.
That makes sense. And something I heard in there that you said, that moral high ground and that focus, probably now more than ever as executives, we have to gain clarity of purpose, don't we? Because that clarity of purpose is probably shifted as a result of what's happening. What techniques or advice can you give based on what you went through to help others make sure that they've really got their clarity of purpose in check?
Well, I think the first thing is, and again, I would say, is that the first thing was I started questioning to say, what is my purpose as a leader? And the moment, and when I felt my purpose as a leader was shaky, at that particular point of time, I had to revisit myself and think of what I stand for as an individual in the first place. When I From there I moved on to what my organization does, how it conducts myself, all the things that we talk to our employees about, and then I could find that there is a complete congruence in what we are saying. That Now, this is something it sounds simplistic that I'm just saying one point over here, but the fact of the matter uh, is that possibly that is the only pure way of measuring whether you have a true purpose. Because if with the purpose you are at your peace of mind, then you know you are in the right place.
Mm.
Yes, they are, I'm saying, in literature and otherwise, as we understand this, purpose by nature is supposed to be very all encompassing. It is like, you're trying to reach for the stars, and the moment you think you've reached too high, then you still find you still have a long way to go. And the other important thing being, it should just connect to the heart. Your purpose, your organization purpose, should just connect to the heart in a very, very simple way to whoever it is destined for.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I want to bring this back up again. For those of you just jumping on, I am talking to supply chain executive Pawan Chandra, and he wrote an incredible article here on the Work It Daily site where he talked about things that you need to consider, specifically 5 things as a leader that you want to be thinking about, and how they pose dilemmas. I think ethical and business dilemmas. And as you were talking about that need to almost inventory, Pawan, I was thinking back to these. Your first one, survival of the business versus doing good. I could almost see putting all your leaders in a room and taking these 5, these are like battles, right? Each one of these was this on the business versus this on the human side, and defining, what we value, what we believe in for each of these, and then trying to find that balance, right? There's the engineer in me almost wants to take a logical approach as I look at some of these. Again, business operations continuity versus people safety, resource deployment versus community need. They're very, very important. And to tie that all back to purpose, like you said, really comes down to, do you feel deeply connected to this? Does this make sense? Which I absolutely love. So no easy answers here for sure, but the fact that you're making us think about these is phenomenal. I want to take some questions from the audience. So we're going to bring one up here from Scott. Scott asks, continuous improvement says we can always do better. How did you map out your future based on your baseline with your team performance? How did agility play in this role versus policy versus doing the right thing? Ooh, good question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Again, one of the things which came up when we started off was that the first instinct for us was to say, oh, we have to guard profitability. And to guard profitability, what do you need to do? So obviously the questions came out that, okay, the easy one out is, can we do people retrenchment? Can we shut down a part of the business? Can we increase the cost? Could be because we are the market leader and there's scarcity. So we had all these alternatives in front of us. On the other hand, we also found there was a need in the community, need as we could see in our employees as well, that affordability of people was decreasing. Even with affordability, the ability to reach was decreasing. So internally within our teams, what we decided, and I think that I would say to a certain extent we've been successful, is we took the pillar of efficiency as a driving pillar for us, where we said that we o- we re through the whole team we looked at what are the wastages which are possible in the system, and we came down very, very heavily on wastages. In terms of our productivity standard, I would say the teams really pushed themselves to increase productivity by 30-40%. So what really happened was, because every resource was not available, every in terms of manpower or machine was not available, so we were able to push the thresholds than what was considered is the right threshold. So going forward, I think I would say that the roadmap that we have found out is that, one is, we found our roadmap that can we reach the customers directly in this case, because we found that between our manufacturing to the customer, there is a huge amount of, I'm saying, interfaces which can be done away with, and they reduce wastages. So in that way, what I do is that I'm able to take care of. I'm not able to. I don't have to increase the power, the price points. I don't have to increase. I have to shed resources because I have to save costs, but get more productivity out of those resources. So I would not be wrong to say that even in such a scenario, if I've been able to increase business, but not at the cost of community or at the cost of profitability, I'm saying possibly I have hit the right patch right now.
Totally makes sense. Amazing. We've got another question here from Jim. Jim asks, how did the crisis change you as a leader, Pawan, and how will that impact you going forward?
Personally, I think on the point of empathy is something that it really touched me much more deeply. Somewhere down the line, somewhere in my work experience as being a very corporate executive, I was sort of very cutthroat in my dealings. But it was at this particular point of time that what I would say is human calling, is that really that sort of came out. And we had situations, just to give an example, was that we had situations where we had to continue, and I found a lot of my teammates were not able to make to work, or they were not able to even, they reported sick. Now, in a normal course, when so many people report sick or they are not able to come to work, you would normally think there's something wrong. But this was the time you would think, no, possibly there may be rightful reasons the person is not able to come to work, and I'll make do with what I have. Don't worry, they will come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that sort of approach and dealing with the team helped, because the crisis has gone on for long, and the team has come back, and everyone is based on his ability. Uh, he's able to shoulder his responsibility. So I think my dealing with people and my empathy has definitely changed for the better.
I love that. And we know study after study shows that that empathy factor is so important. But you're not alone, that part of the reason we become executives is that we can make good, sound business decisions and not let every emotion get the best of us, right? There's that balance of the emotion. So, but it's exciting to hear you recognize that in yourself. I actually have a question about, now that you've been given more constraint, right? Less resources, and you've been able to get results. Do you think, let's say everything went back and you had all the resources at your disposal again and everything went back to normal, do you think you would go back to your old ways of doing business, or do you think that out of this have actually come some new ways that you'll keep?
No, definitely. There's no going back, because in whatever we did, I'm saying, like I said, there is, at least I may still feel that have I done enough, but I still feel I didn't do anything wrong. And by the learnings that I have had from here, I can see critical points of how we can use technology, how we can directly reach the community even with less,
Mm-hmm.
how having plenty of resources is not the ideal thing. Even the intent to support is just good enough to make a difference.
Right.
So, I think from a business point of view, yes, if I were to be given back that many resources, I'm sure I would commit myself to proportionately or manifold increase that much output or gains for the business, or possibly harvest those resources for the benefit of the community.
Mm-hmm.